Welcome to Site Selectors with People 2, the show that brings a personal touch to the world of site selection and economic development. As always, I'm your host, Devin Hillsdon-Smith, and thankfully for all of you, today is the first installment of Stories from the Road, where you don't just have to hear my voice for 50 minutes straight. I'm really excited to introduce my guest here. We've known each other for a while. He's a fellow economic developer in the state of Indiana, Bryant Niehoff. Bryant, I'm going to refer to you as an esteemed economic developer. Ooh. Who's making a significant impact in their community at the Uplands Science and Technology Foundation, which is near the Crane Naval Base in Southwest Indiana. So, Brian, how are you today, man?
I'm good, Devin. How are you doing?
I can't complain. I'm taking some time to speak with a friend here and going to dig into some things that you've been seeing. And, I always enjoy doing these podcasts because they're an opportunity for us to kind of take a step back from the profession. Right. Sure. And really think through things for me at least, talking out loud helps me think through things, which is why I talk so much.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat. External processor. I think if you're in the economic development profession, I think you probably find far more of us than you do on the other side of things. So
it's hard in this profession to not be a talker.
It is.
Right.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Otherwise, you would just hate your day in and day out, because that's all we do is we're just on calls and we're trying to collaborate and bring people together. But that's not necessarily your background, is it? Economic development.
No. I'm actually a community planner by trade. So a city planner. I'm a certified planner through the American Planning Association. So I went to Ball State University. Chirp. That's right. Went to Ball State, the College of Architecture and Planning. And if you would have talked to high school Bryant, he would have told you he was going to be an architect. Then he went into the common first year program there at CAP, and you're getting into ARC 100. And I remember that professor, it was very clear that they were trying to weed people out. I guess I maybe fell victim to that. So the planning side of things really spoke more to me from my background growing up in rural Indiana. So
no, I remember that as well, right? The first day, because I also went to CAP, College of Architecture and Planning, fully intending to be an architect, right? Went a little further than you did, because that first day's speech didn't scare me away from it. And I still remember them saying, if you think that you're going to be a famous, esteemed architect with names associated with buildings, or that you're going to make a ton of money in this profession, get out now.
Yep, leave.
And I went, oh.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not good. But you know what? I'm going to be one of those that make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now look where we are now. So anyway, so you started with community planning from Ball State. Yep. Your first gig then, Shelbyville, right?
So first gig, actually Rushville. I actually went back to my hometown. Right. And my very first internship, it was actually after my freshman year of college. By the way, I did make it through ARC 100. So just, I made it through.
Right, for the record.
So just for the record, right? That's out there. But yeah, so after my first year, I went and I interned for the mayor's office there in Rushville. A mentor of mine, Mayor Mike Pavey, really helped me in a lot of ways, and one, through that internship, but then two, and actually given my first job right out of college, and actually while I was still finishing up my senior year there at Ball State, was working as the planning director for the city and the county, and then finishing up my degree at the same time.
So you did Rushville, and then as happens, you then you moved to Shelbyville.
Then right? Shelbyville, yes.
Then
yes,
Shelbyville.
Then Shelbyville. Yep.
Where you were the director.
Yeah.
Right. Again.
Yep.
So leadership and planning on both sides. Or in both communities. Did you know at that point that you were actually doing economic development as a community planner?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. So, back to kind of jumping back real quick to Rushville, there was really a whole different dynamic. Rushville is a relatively small community, about 6,300 people. It's actually probably different now, but 6,300 people in the entire city, only 18,000 at the time in the entire county, right? So pretty very rural, right? there, actually had the honor of working on several large economic development prospects with the Rush County Economic and Community Development Corporation. So John McCain, I hope John's listening because I got to give him
He better
credit
be.
too. And so, yeah, worked on a few projects there from a planning side. Then in Shelbyville, same deal. It's closer, obviously, to the Indy Metro, right? So there was, a bit more activity, much about 3 times the size of Rushville. So, yeah, that was always one of the parts that just really drew me in about the job, right? Not being the regulator, right? Because sometimes that's how the planning departments can be kind of branded.
Sure.
But in terms of being that partner and that gatekeeper of sorts for the vision for the community, right? And but then partnering with the economic development teams and prospects.
So did you then you had a relationship with the economic development team, so you were involved, you would get involved in prospect meetings, right? Whether you were helping to provide RFI response or you were actually showing up, right? Depending on what they needed out of you.
Sure.
So you obviously knew you were interacting with economic development throughout, but then your next gig that you go to is pure economic development.
Yeah.
Daviess County.
Yeah. So that at that point I took the leap into full blown, economic development, right? So leading up the Economic Development Corporation there in Daviess County. So was an absolute blast of an opportunity. My wife, my now wife, who I met at Ball State, she's from Southern Indiana. So we'd always had plans to kind of really dig our roots down in Southern Indiana. This opportunity came up. I had worked more of in a supporting role in the economic development side of things, right? Supporting from the planning department. But yeah, it was kind of the next leap in my career.
The next leap, and then you really got crazy and decided, you know what, one county isn't enough. Now I'm going to move over to this startup for all intents and purposes, the Uplands Science Technology Foundation, which covers the corners of 3 different counties.
Yeah, emphasis on crazy there.
On
right?
crazy. Yeah, fair.
One rural county isn't enough. Let's triple that, right?
Let's triple that and be beholden to, I don't know, the Navy.
Yeah, that little thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I wanted to go through this because, as I've said on prior episodes, I mean, economic developers come from all walks of life, all types of backgrounds, right? There's very few of us, I think, that actually knew, like you said, high school Bryant, right? High school Bryant had no idea that economic development was going to be the career path, right? High school Devin, and I'm sure maybe high school Bryant as well, didn't even know what the term economic development was.
Sure.
Right?
Same here. Yep.
And so when we're looking to humanize the profession, we have to remember, just like site selectors come from backgrounds like accounting or law or commercial real estate. I can't believe I spaced on that since that's the one I'm in, right? You come from different backgrounds. That's what makes this entire industry so interesting, because there's so many different types of personalities and backgrounds that we go through. And you had said that you absolutely love the work at Daviess, and I know you love the work at USTF as well.
Oh,
but
sure.
What is it for somebody who didn't know that they were going to do this in life? What is it that motivates you? Like, what drives you to wake up every morning and serve your community?
Yeah. No, I mean, 100%. I'm glad, I absolutely love the work at USTF, but I say that I kind of put that emphasis on Daviess County because I think that community, that role really helped me, in so many ways, grow as a person, grow as a professional, grow as a leader, right? In my community. So in Daviess County, what drove me, and what drives me still to this day, and I would say has driven me, in this side of things, it really goes back to that experience we kind of joked around at the beginning about ARC 100, right? And the common first year program. But about community planners, community and economic development professionals, all of us, we have a real opportunity, and we have this, this immense responsibility, right, of charting the direction and, building a path for our communities, right, and essentially just leaving that place better than when you found it, right, and I think that's what drives me every day, is just waking up. And I would say this to Davies County, certainly say this in my role with USTF as well, is that what I'm doing day in and day out is investing in this community to ensure that it grows into, it evolves into, not that it isn't already, but it evolves more into a community that my daughters, I have 3 daughters, want to come back to. And they have a real opportunity and a viable livelihood to come back to. And I think that's what drives me every day.
That's a cool way to put it, right? Making sure that, you've made the decision to put down roots there, right?
Yeah.
But what can you do to ensure that future generations, right, that when your kids go off to school, right, that they go, you know what, I really want to move back.
Yeah,
I really want to
exactly.
move back, right? Because brain drain is an issue everywhere in the country,
Yeah.
right? And so the fact that what motivates you to wake up in the morning and make your community a better place is a focus on the future. I mean, that is the crux of the term development, right? Development indicates you're doing something for the future,
Yep.
right? In this case, we're trying to raise the economic well-being of our communities, make them better places to live, work, and play.
Yeah.
But this is all very up in the ether, right? What we're talking about. People that are listening to this are going to go, okay, great. Well, how do you change the trajectory of your community for the better? So walk us through, either when you were at Davies or here at USDF, or a little bit of both. Walk us through a typical day in your life as an economic developer.
Yeah.
There is no typical. I know that. I'm asking.
There is no. I was about to say, what day? Where do you start? Because they're all different, right? No, I mean, I think it just depends, right? I mean, I think back to my time at Davies County, and certainly even more in the more recent past with USTF, when I started with these organizations, right? You come in day one and you just think, okay, where do I begin? Where do I start? How do I wrap my head around what makes this community tick? What role I play? How do I fit into it? How do I get to that point of really making that difference, right? That I referenced earlier. And, every role you navigate differently, right? But I think to start, it's just figuring out what this place is and what makes it tick. And how do you do that? It's again, we referenced this earlier. It's just by talking to folks, right? Having conversations like this, instead of asking, what makes an economic developer tick, it's what makes this community, what is the common thread that pulls this community together? What are our challenges?
So are you like an avid consumer of the local newspaper?
Yeah. Some.
A massive, contributor on Nextdoor, right? Like, how are you keeping your finger on the pulse of the community? Like, what are your sources that you go to? Is it just by way of you're having so many conversations day in and day out that you're naturally absorbing, or do you have a more intentional way of going about it?
I would say it's probably the former, right? It's probably just the network.
Oh, don't get me started. My last podcast, I went like 30 seconds trying to remember the difference between former and latter. So thank you. That's a sore topic there.
Sorry.
Keep going.
Apologies for that. Yeah. So the former, right? It's the network that I built through Davies County, the network through that the connections to Crane, right? The connections to our regional partners, ROI, certainly, Radius, Indiana, White River Military Coordination Alliance, CRDG. I mean, the list goes on, right? I think it's through that immense network. We use the term ecosystem, a lot. I think that's how, me personally, not that it's the best way to do it, right? I'm sure there's a far better way, but keep my finger on the pulse and stay engaged in what's happening here.
So then, I mean, it's keeping your network of leaders intact, right? Making sure there's trust and there's relationships there, right? Which I had talked about on a prior episode. Somebody had asked me, how do you actually go about building trust, right? And that's such a hard question to answer. But when you have that trust in those relationships, you, by nature of what you just said, right? You can knock out multiple birds with one stone, right? You can be getting work done, whether that be for putting together a new strategic plan or respond to RFIs or trying to figure out, what direction to go when you have interest on multiple parcels or on multiple interested parties on one parcel of land, right? As you're going about your day, nice thing is if you've built that trust in those relationships, which is why it's key that you don't just always put your head down and just typing away, right?
Yeah.
You're in a good spot. But how then, these are the leaders in your community. How then
Mhm.
does the average individual, right, the average citizen, how do they interact with economic development or with economic developers?
Yeah, I guess I'll jump to the first question and then kind of come back to the second. So the first being like, how do you build that trust? I think again, it depends on your community, but I think to the folks in Davies County, again, I mean, I spent 5 years there. Initially it was, so what, I was 25, 26. Who is this young kid coming in and is going to lead our economic development program? Like, what does he know? And you could feel that, like that, like, oh, is he really going to? But then I think it's being being self-aware, right?
Mm,
And admitting what you know and what you don't know, right? And hey, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm coming from. This is the background I'm coming from. These are areas that may not be my strong suits. So I want to be very intentional about building up a team and a network around that, right? I think, I don't know, my experience has been the more that you were just very candid and upfront about those strengths and maybe, those weaknesses, that helps earn trust because just like you're doing here, let's, you know, uh, put a face to the economic development professional, to the site selection profession. Um, that shows folks that you're human, right?
right.
And I think that helps build trust more than anything else. And that takes time, right? But I think the more you do that, the more successful you're going to be in building that trust. And then to the latter about the interaction with the public, it's interesting because I think it's again, different in every community, but I think regardless of what you're doing as an economic development professional, to someone you're going to be doing the wrong thing, right? It's not
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not the
Or
right
multiple people
project.
are going to be screaming, he's the worst.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so it's funny. I'm a people pleaser by nature. You know that about me, and you and I, our
We share that.
friendship, and yeah, and so I naturally want to make people happy, right? I want people to be pleased with me, the performance I'm doing as a job, and all of that. I very quickly had to come to terms with like that's not going to work here, Bryant, right? And you need to find satisfaction in your role elsewhere. And I had someone tell me this. They were actually speaking in the context of a school superintendent. They said, as a school superintendent, people are going to be, ticked off at you one way or another. You're doing too much. You're not doing enough. You're doing the wrong thing. Regardless, they're going to be talking about you. So what do? You do the right thing. You do what you were convicted by, right? And what go back to that goal, what that drive is that, help build a community that my girls want to come back to, using my background and experience and the experience of those around us, the network. How do we leverage that? What do we recommend, as the best alternative? And that helps me sleep every night, right? Despite the naysayers and despite the folks that think what you're doing maybe isn't the right path. So
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because this profession you can get beat down very quickly,
oh yeah.
day in and day out, right? We all have thick skin.
Yeah.
There's certain things, and because of the broad range of issues and items that we have to tackle, right? So for us, our biggest challenge is the fact that we're people pleasers. In this profession,
Mhm.
it's very hard to, right? And so there can be this cognitive dissonance that continuously just is gnawing away at you. But I'm glad you brought that up because I think no matter what your thing is, right? Whatever your people pleaser issue is that makes this profession hard, what you just said was critical in that you should always, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling knocked down, drag out, that's fine. It's okay to recognize that because we're humans. But
Mhm.
go back to the source, right? Your reason for doing this job. Because even if day in and day out it's difficult, if you remember that you're building a community that your daughters would be thrilled to come back to and build their lives in, how can you not smile when you say that?
Oh my
right?
gosh. Yeah.
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 So, with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit about the future, a little bit about USTF, and we're going to call this thing a wrap. All right, and we are back with Bryant Niehoff, the Executive Director of the Uplands Science and Technology Foundation, formerly with Daviess County Economic Development, formerly with the City of Shelbyville, formerly with the City of Rushville, and formerly a fellow Ball Stater. Chirp, chirp.
Chirp, chirp.
So, we're going to get into something a little more, well, we're going to switch focus here. We've seen some trends over the last couple of years that have really reshaped what economic development looks like, right? No longer is it just chasing, automotive factories that you can turn cornfields into, right? That's what it was forever. That was the home run. Now you have to figure out how to navigate daycare development and fiber development. And I mean, there's so many different ways that economic developers get pulled in so many different directions. How do you envision the future of economic development and site selection? Not only from a trends that we're currently seeing, maybe some things that you're seeing. Well, let's leave it at that. How do you envision the future of this profession?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're living it, right? And you said that, just a moment ago, with the shift being from, okay, do you have the right tangibles, right? Who is it? Jay Garner, that says, no product, no project. I think I got that right. I didn't mix it up there. No product, no project, right? So I think, I mean, at its core, obviously you have to have sites, you have to have the infrastructure supporting it. I mean, all of that, right? Like that's just a given. But that used to be it, right? Right. I mean, you have the sites. Who was it? I think Lee Llewellyn, right, with the Indiana Economic Development Association used the example, of an economic developer waiting by the phone for someone to call about that option on the cornfield, right? Whereas now, so we're preparing for a site visit coming up on Thursday, where it is so much more nuanced, right? I mean, workforce is just at the top of every single discussion, right? And I am so grateful that we have the wonderful people at, IU and Purdue and Ivy Tech and Vincennes, and we're so blessed with that here in Indiana. But that's a top of every conversation. In Ball State. Oh, thank you. My gosh.
There you go.
Our alma mater. My goodness.
No offense, Ball State.
Yeah, please. So yeah, I mean, that the workforce side of things, not only from the skills training, but how do we get people here, right? And what does your community look like? What makes it tick? Why do people want to be here, right? And that's where the old childcare thing, like you talked about, and fiber internet and parks and trails, and heck, I was on the phone earlier. I left a message for the fire chief in our area, right? Talking about fire support and, and how that impacts what we're trying to do from an attraction project. So I think the industry is going to continue to head in that direction of where it's more about the intangibles of a community. And, I'd love to get your perspective on this as a site selection consultant now is, how do site selectors, how do they gauge that, right? Because so much of this industry is objective, right? But anymore, it's the winners and losers are the winners, I should say, are those that are winning on the intangibles. Is that fair?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Especially what I found on this side is that there's so many communities trying to stand out, trying to get your attention, right? I agree with you though that no matter what direction this industry goes, it does all rest on, do you have the tangibles in place, right? No product, no project. But with how quickly things are evolving, the intangibles, so quality of life, quality of place, right? Or the feeling of the community. Is this a place that I would want to be? Things that are not as easily measured. I had mentioned on another episode that, that's what you call qualitative data, right? Quantitative is how many megawatts do you have? How much time is it going to take for this? How much is it going to cost, right? Something with very hard and fast numbers, objective info. It's very easy to compare. But then how do you get into that more subjective, the feeling stuff, the intangibles? And That's where that's the reason why this is an art and a science,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
You may have so you could take a project and you could hypothetically have one site selection firm run it, right, all the way through, and every single factor is the same, except for one thing, the site selection firm and the individuals that are lead on that project. Then you could rinse and repeat, right? Go back to day one and rinse and repeat with another site selection firm with another group of individuals running it. And because of our backgrounds and experiences and our biases, everybody has a bias or has biases, right? You're going to see a very different end result based on how you're asking and analyzing certain qualitative measures, certain intangibles, right? So I don't have a good answer for you there. I think it's fascinating though, and I think that's why it's so important. Why I spend so much time on this side, competing heavily for projects for me to land clients because they're trying to figure out, is this our guy? Does he share the same worldview and or does he augment and supplement our worldview to the extent that he's going to challenge us when he needs to?
Sure.
But he's not seeing things through such a different lens that, like, at the end of the day, we're going to go, well, yeah, I guess you did your job and we're in the right location, but it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Economic developers, I mean, I would just say, well, I'm going to use this to pivot to the next question here. I think technology is your best friend.
Yeah.
For getting through some of this. How do you rise to the top and communicate certain things, right? Have you dove into AI with your job much?
Yeah.
I don't mean like, hey, ChatGPT, write me an email because I'm tired.
Yeah. So every single response here, as a matter of fact, has been generated by ChatGPT. So thank you for that. Actually, that's not at all true. So, but no, I mean, so see, I ended up in economic development. I'd be a terrible comic. So
you got me to laugh. I thought that was great.
Thanks, man. Okay, cool. So yeah, no, I mean, absolutely have leveraged it. I would love to know more. It's funny. I'm the YouTube video nerd, right? And I'll sit there and I'll go down a rabbit hole and search and find these kind of how to effectively use AI. And it really is, to your point earlier about, economic development being an art of the science, there is a right and a wrong way to use AI, right? Just in a like, how do we leverage this to be stronger professionals, right? And amplify productivity and all of that, right? I say it in that way.
Amplify productivity. I like that. That because the point I was going to get there, as technology pushes us forward, right? There's a concern in multiple professions that, well, technology AI is going to replace us. I don't think so. I think it makes us better if we can use it appropriately.
Yeah, I don't know. I could be old school in thinking this. I mean, the human mind is such a complex. I mean, and it's going to be really hard pressed to replace human decision making, right? Yeah. And all the qualitative factors that you as a site selector, for example, right? Like I've never thought about it from that perspective. The pressure that you're under as a site selector, that you have the decision of this corporation, this organization in your hands as to this next expansion, their new home, their new headquarters, whatever it might be. And by gosh, like, your name, your brand is on the line if that doesn't turn out to be the place that they thought it was, or that you all thought it was, right? So like, that's an interesting way to look at site selection, because you're humanizing the profession, right?
There you go. Right.
But even, to our conversation about AI, like, that is such a challenging and complex series of decisions to navigate, right? But the way I use it is busy work, right? Or if I'm just hitting a roadblock, right? Or if I need a quick way to get like to generate a bunch of ideas really quickly, right? Those are some ways I'll look at it.
So. Well, I'm just gonna lift the veil here, right? Show behind the curtain. The entire structure of this podcast, Site Selectors Are People Too. I had the idea. I kind of knew what direction I want to go. I'd never done a podcast before.
Sure.
I typed into ChatGPT, right? You had to type in the right prompts, but effectively it pumped out the first 10 episodes for me if I wanted to follow that path, right? Which I've got a couple of them in there. but it helped to get me right sized and to start having conversations. And I think what we're going to see though is, I think we're going to see, because of AI, our collective world is going to move a lot faster than it even already is.
Oh my gosh.
And so for those individuals that have not figured out AI or how to use it in their day-to-day to, process and wade through ridiculous amounts of data, or to knock out that writer's block that can suck your time away for an hour if you let it. If you don't figure out how to use this technology, everybody else is going to start moving a lot faster, because it's not us. It's almost like we've got an entire team that we can manage now, right? But I don't think that dehumanizes the professional. I think maybe that frees us up to be more productive, like you said, to focus in more on the relationships side, the building the trust side. And instead of, spending hours, days, weeks trying to figure out how to respond to an RFI, if you had your AI in order, right, you could technically find a way to have it backfill after you've taught it and do the RFI process for you.
Yeah.
To some extent.
Wow.
Right? You could tell it.
There's a life hack for economic
There it is right there, right? You could tell it, here's the project requirements, right? Here's what we know, et cetera. Take everything you know about our property that we have, right, in our community, and generate a first draft of an RFI response.
Oh my gosh.
Then here's the end result, right? We're doing better by our communities. I'm doing better by my clients, and the decision on the back end should therefore be that much better for everybody, to some extent.
If used right.
If used right.
If used right, yeah.
In fact, I'll use AI, and this is where I love it, right? I'll use AI to gut check.
Are you there, Devin?
Whoa.
Oh, are you there?
Yep. You there?
Hey, I lost you for a second. Yep. Sorry.
Technology is wonderful, right?
It is.
Technology is fantastic. I might even keep that in there. Anyways, So anyways, that's a little bit about the future there. Speaking of the future, I wanted to give you an opportunity here, as I plan to do with all these stories in the row, and I'll let you go because you've already been very gracious with your time. USTF, right? So tell us a little about USTF. What are the unique opportunities that the foundation offers to businesses, investors? Let's start there, and I'll have one more follow-up question, and we'll call this a wrap.
Sure. Yeah. So USTF, the Uplands Science and Technology Foundation. So our organization was established out of the Westgate Crane Master Plan. So it started in 2019, really kind of wrapped up in 2021. So it spans both pre and post and during COVID, right? I feel like we started to kind of use those as time, differentiators. So Westgate, for those of you that don't know, Westgate at Crane, it's a certified technology park located in Southwest Indiana, just outside of the of Naval Support Activity Crane, NSA Crane. It's the third largest naval installation in the world, right in Southwest Indiana. That's by land.
Not on the ocean.
Not on the ocean at all. For
those of you that don't understand Indiana, no, we're not on the ocean.
No. Smack dab in the center of the U.S. And there is a large lake, right? There's a large lake in the center, So we're just outside the gate of NSA Crane, and a unique factor, other than we're outside of a Navy installation in Indiana, is that Westgate spans 3 counties. So it's actually at the confluence of Davies, Martin, and Greene. We kind of referenced that earlier. So as the LEDO, as the economic development professional there in Davies County, was obviously very engaged in Westgate and was involved in the master plan. Through that process, we, as in any planning process, you identify strengths, weaknesses. One of the challenges that was very prevalent there at Westgate was the fact that there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? There are a lot of players involved. And this is a unique technology park, not only from our proximity to the base, but also because we are trying to develop as a single unit, but spanning 3 jurisdictions, right? So there needs to be a more strategic, coordinated approach, and therefore USTF was developed. We're part of the Indiana Uplands region. It's an 11 county region here in Southwest, South Central Indiana, and ROI, the Regional Opportunities Initiative, was a founding, member and supporter of our organization and of the Westgate Master Plan. So,
and this is all private sector, by the way, right?
This is all private, yeah.
Basically all nonprofits supported by for-profits, right?
Yep. So we're a nonprofit 501c3 organization. I say we, meaning me and the mouse in my pocket in terms of staff, right? It's myself. I am the CEO. I am the janitor. I'm the coffee maker, administrative assistant, et cetera. So Devin here. I'm going to say fortunate. We are very fortunate that Devin was willing to serve on our board of directors and really provide a very unique, not only economic development perspective with his background at River Ridge previously, but certainly from a site selection perspective as well with his role with Cushman now. So it just really helps us, I would say, hone our strategic advantage and how we tell our story and, how we really execute on the ground in terms of moving projects. So sorry, that was a really long-winded way of saying what we do.
I think you got around to, so execute and move projects, right? So when a site selector or a company that has interest in being or a need in being, near a military installation, and it happens to be one like Crane, right? And they're doing things that are of interest to USTF and the broader region. How do they look at USTF? What role do you then play, right, in the project life cycle? What would you like site selectors to know as far as what role you all play in the project life cycle?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, because I think at the core of it, that's one of USTF's immediate significant advantages is, I know in being on the economic development, the local economic development side of things for Daviess County prior, actually one of my first projects was, I won't use any names, right? But one of my first projects was a defense contractor who was working with a real estate broker. They were looking for a site. They were calling around to each of the three counties. They knew they wanted to be in Westgate, but what happened was almost this, unbeknownst to us, bidding war of sorts, right, on this project. When it's all within the same, the same area. So, what our competitive advantage is that, one, to the site selector and to the organization that they represent, we're that single point of contact, that ombudsman that walks with you every step of the way in how you transact at Westgate, right? So before, whether it was intentional or not, that real estate broker ended up in Daviess County because, and calling me because they knew at least part of Westgate was in Daviess County, but then, they ended up in Martin County too. And who do you call? Do I call the Westgate, Academy? That seems to be kind of the center of activity within. Well, no, they just manage the building. So who can help me walk through actually establishing a location here, right? And that's where USTF was set up to be, hey, I've got you. Here are sites, right? Here are opportunities. How can I help you take that next step, right?
So you're the easy button for the region.
Easy button. Yep.
Right. Yep. Which these days, with how fast things are moving, that is an asset, especially when playing in the regionalism sandbox, right? To have a one-stop shop and easy button, that can't be oversold whatsoever, because there's so much value in that, right? Because there's a lot of communities that I will go into, and again, I have a bias here because I do serve on the USTF board, but even removing that hat, I will say objectively, there's a lot of communities, especially ones I've never dealt with before, that all of a sudden I'm sitting there going, all right, am I supposed to be talking to the county, the township, the city? Am I supposed to be talking, well, there's a regional group, but they don't seem to be that active. Do I go to the state? Well, okay, the state's not responding, right? And then all of a sudden I've wasted all of this time that I could have been spent on something else. For USTF to exist and be able to shepherd projects through the entire process, no matter which county they're looking at, I think that is one of the greatest values that you all offer.
Sure. Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah.
Very good. Anything else you want folks to know about USTF? Otherwise, I have one final question for you.
No, I don't think so. I mean, would be happy to chat with anyone, right? I mean, it's been a fun ride. It's been interesting because, like Devin mentioned earlier, we are in that we're on the newer end of economic development organizations and kind of threading that needle through the different communities in Westgate. So, but yeah, would be happy to talk offline with anyone listening that just wants to learn more about Westgate or USTF.
Right. I'll be, as long as you're okay with that, I'll be putting your email and maybe desk phone number into the description of the episode. All right. Absolutely. The last question, and this is one that I did not prep you for. This one, you have an option. Okay. You can either tell me a fun fact that maybe you think that folks have never heard before, right? So it can be, something about dolphins or something about, give us a fun fact or tell us your best joke.
Oh gosh. Well, it's definitely the former. Right? Did I do that right again? Yep. I'm just going to keep doing that. It's definitely an interesting fact because I'm a terrible joke teller. But I will say a fun fact about me, and I haven't used it. I don't even think you know this, Devin, but I was a brown belt in karate. I got to my second degree. If I would have like hung around maybe for a year longer, I could have tested for my black belt. I didn't.
Why not?
But I got worn out, and I started when I was in grade school, in elementary school, went through middle school. I think I maybe stopped doing it 8th grade, got into high school, just thought I was too cool, and like that's now I like
cool
use that
to kick ass and take names.
I know. Yeah. I just didn't. I got into other things. I got into football, which I was terrible at. I was just a warm, big body out there, So yeah, but yeah, I gave it. So there's some footage out there. There's some photos of little Bryant breaking some boards and doing. I'll try to find that and send it to you.
I definitely think you should. Okay, so good to know now not to disagree with you too much when we're sitting in a board meeting, right? Like you're supposed to be reporting to us, but now I'm going to be sitting there going, hey, guys, not leave it alone. Leave it alone. Trust me on this.
Hey, there's a reason we do all our board meetings virtual, Devin, because it's kind of hard to do that through a screen.
Yeah, I didn't even flinch. You look like you made that fact up.
Yeah, I did.
Anyways, well, thank you, Bryant. I appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing your insights and experiences with us. It's been a pleasure learning about the person behind, the role. Somebody who's been in economic development, jumped, from one to another, started in planning in a major way all the way through. So to our listeners, again, I'm going to put his contact information in the episode description. If you have any interest in reaching out, it's a fantastic area if you have anybody defense related or tech related, right? Yep. For them to consider. So thanks again to everybody. This has been Stories from the Road, and join us next time on Site Selectors for People 2 as we continue to humanize the industry and uncover the stories that shape our communities. See you, Bryant.
Hey, thanks, Devin. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye. Just a heads up, views expressed in this podcast are solely my own and are not attributable to any employers, whether past or present. Thank you.